You're strong.
I know.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy, the only show that knows that Zack Snyder and the new 52 were the best things to ever happen to DC. I'm Jared. I'm here with Brit. How are you, Brit?
Hey, how you doing?
So today we're talking about, like I said, how Zack Snyder specifically and the new 52 were like the best things to happen to DC. And I can already hear all the keyboard warriors typing out their essay length refutations to what we're going to say, but whatever. So so we're talking about that, and then at the end of the episode, we'll have a fun little collab Brit and I are working on to tease for you. So let me share the PowerPoint, and then we'll get started. So, all right. So the way I figured we'd start with this is, so we'll give a brief analysis of Superman in the movies previous to Snyder coming in. So Brit, you were telling me back screen that you did a bunch of research into Christopher Reeves and stuff. How about you start?
Okay, so the first movie, the first part of the movie, or the catch or whatever, is, can you believe a man can fly? Yeah. And that is something that, as a kid, you do want that superpower. You think that it's cool and everything. So at that time, it's this big hoopla of seeing a man, and it refers back to Wrestlers 2 wearing the spandex and the underwear. You have, the kid that puts on a blanket to represent the cape and all that kind of stuff. So that was that. And seeing that first movie, even for me, my mom, she showed it to me when I was younger, because she was a fan of Superman too. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I did love the character. I wasn't into comics or anything. I didn't know anything about it. But that movie I did like. Mm-hmm. And I only liked the part of Christopher Reeve, as the character, and how he was very warm. He was very positive and everything like that. That's the feeling that you get for the first movie.
100%. And same thing for me, because it's actually kind of funny. Until I saw the Justice League animated show, I didn't know that there were other heroes beyond Superman and Batman, because I was only watching the movies. So yeah, watching this, the only part that I always really didn't sit well was the fact that he has the powers of a god, and when he shows up, everyone's so cool with him. But that was my one point, which it's movies in the 70s, and to a certain degree, you do have to have a suspension of belief to a degree.
Yeah, it was to be, kid friendly, whimsical type, even, kind of still the same as the cartoons, when you watch the Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry. It was in that certain realm. So it's kind of that gets the pass. The second movie, it's it's like the sequel curse. Sequels always is just terrible, and either financially terrible, or just the plot is something wrong with it. So you have the whole situation with Donna Cut and everything. You have just the story falls apart, especially when he loses his powers, and it's kind of you're only losing your powers to be with Lois, which is very problematic, and that starts to show how you want this to be a romance movie, or turn Superman into this super hero Fabio. But the romance is subtly toxic. So he loses his powers.
Well,
Uh-huh.
here's the thing. That's the one thing Wonder Woman has over Lois Lane. At least she and Superman can have kids without him losing his powers.
Right. Or you have to go to a another planet or something. But even that doesn't make sense because even though he loses his powers, it's still the fact that his DNA state remains the same. So,
That's why the whole convergence excuse for how they had John doesn't make sense. But we'll get into that more in the comics section of the discussion. But go on.
So then just the whole thing with the second movie. Then the third is basically like, I I didn't see the third, but I guess it didn't really, capture anyone's um attention too much. It wasn't taken too seriously. Then you go to the Quest for Peace of the fourth one, and it basically from then on it starts dwindling down to you basically you lose the plot. And
Yeah.
especially behind the scenes during the third movie, Christopher Reeve actually said, it wasn't so much as he's getting bored with the character of Superman, he was getting bored with Clark Kent because you have him acting, the uh, galoot, you have him acting
To
like,
quote a certain studio executive, yes.
you have him acting, just so cowardly, or it's kind of like, okay, we've seen this act for so long, it's time to move on from it.
Mm-hmm. True
and
that.
also and also the romance with Lois, it was kind of like it was the same thing. It was just like trying to get her to, you already lost your powers for her and you saw how bad that was. Now you have the the kiss, the forgotten kiss or whatever. At some point you
His
have,
powers at this, well, in the movie's defense, remember this is the period because Silver Age Superman is the power level where he was pulling a solar system on a chain. So okay, you know what? I kind of buy that all of a sudden he has his powers. Plus, remember he was also able to rebuild a wall by staring at it.
yeah. And then and then when to save Lois because she died. And here's the trope of Superman turning evil or doing stupid stuff for Lois when she dies, is turning back time.
Wait,
Um
Time travel!
I had to. That was set up well.
so you have that, and it's kind of like, okay, the romance obviously isn't working. And the main part of that too, by the end, it was basically that relationship didn't work. It
Mm-hmm.
it it was supposed to have its end. And Christopher Reeve, in behind the scenes, he actually, there's a video. I had trouble finding it. I know I will find it, but um, he and Keeter actually had like a beef, a behind the scenes beef of not getting along,
Mm-hmm.
and he basically felt like she was older, and he felt she was more like a sister to him,
Mm-hmm.
so having her as a love interest just didn't work for him. And so he did want someone younger, and he did want, just to move on from that. So you had, and then I believe a friend shared with me too a while back that the plans for another movie was to actually bring in a superpowered woman to be his love
How? I wonder who
interest.
that could be. Hmm.
Actually, it was going to be like a superwoman, supergirl type thing. So yeah,
Well, if it was Supergirl, that'd be a little creepy, but okay.
well, it was superwoman, kind of like
They could
how,
have done like Maxima, maybe. They would have had to change the character and everything, but I was like, I could
yeah,
buy that.
it's still the fact that they wanted to have a superpowered, love interest now
Hmm.
to make it more interesting. So yeah, so the evolution of Superman basically is, yeah, you do have that initial romance, the check marks with a hero. You have the civilian romance. You have the disguise, the secret identity. You the introduction and all of that. But if you want to keep the franchise going, you have to do something different.
Yeah.
And that's where it just fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why pretty much no one actually brings up the later sequels because it completely fell apart.
Well, plus, and by the way, I blew some Superman's fans' minds when I was on a stream once, because they were disputing the whole Superman killing Zod in Man of Steel, and I went, he killed him in the Reeves movies, and I'm like, and they were like, well, no, he didn't. I'm like, okay, let me break down what actually happens in this movie. He redirects red sunlight outside this chamber so they get depowered. Then he punches them into a solid wall. Full power, mind you. He's dead. So I'm like, this whole thing about superheroes not killing is just wrong.
Yeah, well, even in the comics, it's
Mhm.
like we'll get to that. Is that a lot of the comic book fans or whatever purists, they aren't really purists because if you are a purist, you would know that killing he has been killing since the golden age. So it's like that's not anything new. It shouldn't be anything shocking. Sure, the character has changed, to be that friendly. He doesn't kill or whatever. But no,
The
if
way
you
I
go
see
back.
it, he does it as the very last resort.
Yeah, I mean, well, Golden Age, he really didn't care. It's kind of like you're, a bad guy. I'll throw you off a roof if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly, I, as far as the killing and no killing, it's kind of like, I say Max Lord.
Yep,
Okay,
that's the
with
best
him,
example.
he is a human, but he has like no human, soul.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this, especially, um, with how we're going to deal with it. And that is someone who is completely irredeemable. And when
Mm-hmm.
you are left with that choice of someone that's irredeemable, at that point, no, you have to make that choice. And there wouldn't be a devil or an angel on your shoulder. It would be, yes, this person has to die, because they have the intent to continue on being evil with no, if they don't have any kind of questionable, you know, feelings within themselves about what they're doing, you shouldn't. And especially when you're trying to um keep the safety of innocence. So yeah, the whole killing thing to me and how I would deal with it, if even if it's a human, if that human is irredeemable, go ahead, like off with your head. Even if
Well,
it's a monster, that is basically how they are inside, though.
yep. And the thing is also is like with the whole Zod thing, I'm like, in Man of Steel, where could they hold him? People are like, well, he should take him into the authorities. Yeah, what are the authorities going to do against a Kryptonian? Because
Right.
mind you, this is before kryptonite was discovered.
Yeah. I mean, some people they just don't really analyze it too much.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. It, a lot of these moviegoers or comic book moviegoers, they think surface level.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, you did have this established type look at these characters. Like I said, they were fit to be family friendly, to be, akin to Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, cartoons. So that is what you see live action. But
Mm-hmm.
as you get older, or as time progresses, people are now gravitating to when you do see like the, I would say, I wasn't much of a superhero movie person, um, but the first X-Men movie
Yes.
was basically when my reintroduction of superhero movies. And with Wolverine and X-Men and everything, it's kind of like, okay, they can be serious. And with seeing the '90s X-Men cartoon or the late 2000s, whatever, it felt like it still came together. So I didn't really see any difference because it was a natural progression to the generation, to
Yeah.
the generational evolution. So with Superman though, now you have Superman Returns, and
Mm-hmm.
that is basically a sequel to Superman at 2,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted you to forget the other Reeves actual sequels of the third and fourth. And you know, when I never saw that movie, I wasn't interested. Even with seeing the trailer, it just didn't interest me. And
I saw it. See, it's one of those things that's like underrated. But the problem I have with with the Brandon Routh Superman movie is I don't like how small the S is. To me, it should be like the full chest. It shouldn't be like a small portion of the chest.
it they wanted to recreate, and that's the thing that these, especially with Superman's franchise, they want to recreate Reeves so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you want to modernize him, you can't modernize exactly the whimsical part of it. You have
Mm-mm.
to, within the generation, you have to end up going with the more realistic take, and it might be a little bit darker.
I mean,
And
hell,
that's
that's
what,
what comics did,
yeah,
and more on that later.
and that's what X-Men, X-Men was a huge thing, a huge franchise, and you had Hugh Jackman. I mean, he is the embodiment of Wolverine because his Wolverine basically, you know, raised the whole generation, and you saw that evolution. You saw even with Bale's Batman,
Mm-hmm.
you saw that Batman. He came from Adam West, goofy, you know, it 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 basically almost the Adam West type, um that whole era
Mm-hmm.
almost killed Batman
Yeah.
because it was so silly, but people nowadays praise it and they love it. It aged, really well. But Batman was able to still progress once they figured that out, that okay, it's time to move on from that. They did, and you see Batman, you know, continuing on for generations and generations, evolu- you know, evolving.
Well, not only that, because remember, I bring up the DC documentary all the time because that new one, while there are certain parts of it I disagree with, like the whole, well, there's a portion of our fan base that doesn't want politics in comics, but the the part that I do like specifically is when they go, when referring to the Adam West show, they say, well, that show showed like Warner Brothers in the audience is that you can have all these different interpretations of these characters and have vastly different tones.
Yeah, and these characters are supposed to be multifaceted. They are supposed to be where you can put them in different genres. You can have and that's kind of what they're trying to do, or try to do with Elseworlds and stuff. But it takes of course, a creative writer to actually get it
Mm-hmm.
and not, twist the characters too much and remain with the core. But yeah, these characters can be in different genres. And with Superman, it's just like no one wants to step out at all. They want to recreate Reed. And with Superman Return, you had what they tried to do is make it solely a romance story.
Mm-hmm.
And but that romance story, I remember when, first seeing, I guess, the anniversary of the movie or something, or no, it was when Man of Steel was coming out, and they have to compare
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. Well, with um Superman Returns, it was that he was like a deadbeat stalker, And I was just like, what?
Yeah. He was also a deadbeat dad, too. He like abandoned his kid.
I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't think I want to know, because if you label him as a, deadbeat dad, stalker, or whatever, I don't want to see it. And it's like, with knowing the plot, I still haven't seen it, not interested. But with knowing more of the plot and everything, it's like, yeah, this isn't what you wanted for Superman. And that is why WB was not interested in the Superman franchise and never had like this solid plan for the character. And even now, with all across the board, they just don't have any type of confidence with the character. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, step back and take a look basically in the mirror and see why
Yeah.
you don't have that confidence, because you all are the problem. You are keeping the character stagnant in one place of this 40 plus year old movie that, yes, it is timeless. We're not taking that away, but it was for its time. Now you have
yeah.
now you have to have the character evolve for this generation. And that is the one thing that Man of Steel was.
Okay.
And
Wait. Here we go.
and with Man of Steel, you go back to, well, first, the thing is with Superman Purist is he's reduced to the red underwear.
Yeah,
And
they act like if he doesn't have the red underwear, the entire character should be thrown out. And I'm like, by the way, according to like the guy who's drawing my book, he said that he was in some like circles and some Facebook groups that he had to leave because they were legit saying when like they were making Man of Steel that they should just face replace and put Reeves on the actor and just keep Reeves playing Superman forever.
And that is just something that, with
By the way,
bad,
breaking into the fact that Reeves himself wanted different people to have their opportunity to play Superman. Because even Cavill, when the whole James Gunn firing him went through, he said, yeah, this character is beyond one actor.
yeah, I mean, I think that both had their, honestly, there is something that's called the like Superman curse, where basically it's like the whole franchise is, for some reason, it's a gray cloud, over it, because you have, and honestly, the gray cloud is the fans, because they want, so it's kind of like they want the bare minimum, but it's maximized. So for Superman, their thing is he has to smile, but he has to smile all the time.
All the time. Because that's the thing is that I'm gonna make another. So I have two edits planned for the Snyderverse. One is a compilation of every time in the Snyderverse Superman saves anyone, because there's a narrative that goes around that he never saves anyone, and the compilation of him smiling.
Yeah, it's like, it has to be a genuine. When you say he needs to smile all the time, he becomes like a robot or something, or he becomes just the cartoon character and just stays within that. But to keep the comparison, even with Tom and Jerry, even with Looney Tunes, they had some dark stuff in there. They had the characters sad sometimes, and that still resonates and that's still relatable. So Superman can have those moments of feeling depressed or feeling, how, or his confidence or anything like that. Especially what you said about everyone basically loving him, agreeing with him, cheering him on
Immediately when they first see him, considering this guy has the powers of a god. And I'll tell you one thing, that's what drew me to Snyderverse, because first off, watch it before this movie. I couldn't give two hells about Superman because I thought he was lame. I gotta be honest. I thought he was a lame character, and that's the public perception about Superman. Yes, he's still iconic and everything, but they still see him as like a goody two shoes lame character, and people don't like that. When Zack put his spin on Superman, what I saw was because what Zack has said in the past is that I like to take these characters and break them down to their fundamental core and then build them back up to what they are. That's what he did with Clark. And then when you watch Man of Steel, it's really a movie about a guy that's different from other people and has to deal with a world that is afraid of him. Help, anyone can relate to that. So he somehow made a god relatable. And then when you move on to like BVS, I still say what the best scene about BVS is when he's still saving people despite them doubting him and calling him a potential threat, because it's like, no, I don't need your approval. No matter what, I am going to save humanity.
Right. And that goes to what Superman personifies as a refugee and the outsider perspective. Because when, especially no matter your ethnicity, where you come from, people are going to judge you before they get to know you. And sometimes and there are going to be people that do accept you from the get-go, or it's going to be people who question you. And that is what Superman needs, is to show that when a kid, like I said, of a different ethnicity goes to school, and you have that first feeling of shyness, are you going to make any friends? Are you going to be accepted because of who you are? You grow up with seeing even adults act that way. Even the world is now the world is trying to accept diversity, but back then it was very difficult, for and how divided society is. And it is still, people judgmental and everything like that. It's not a utopia, of course it's not. But Superman and Wonder Woman are the characters who are to explore that kind of, feeling. And
the other thing, what you said about Superman being inspirational is that I remember there was this also line in Man of Steel when he meets like the AI of Jor-El, and then Jor-El's explaining the symbol of the House of El means hope, and embodied within that hope is the fundamental belief in the potential of every person to be a force for good. And now he goes, Clark, you will be an example to them. They will stumble, they will fall, but they will join you in the sun. And by the way, at the end of the Snyder Cut, when the Justice League is standing on that little nuclear reactor and the sun is behind them, I got to think that was Snyder going, okay, I'm going to bring this full circle to Man of Steel right here.
Yeah, that is exactly what that means. It's that the Justice League, or heroes or whatever, they are a bunch of, when they're in, it depends, but basically these people with powers are the outsiders. On some
Look at
level,
Cyborg.
yeah. And you want children to feel accepted, but you also have to show them the down part too, that it's not going to be easy, that it is going to be a challenge of life. That if you are inspired by this character and you show that this character is easily accepted, or you have where Superman is now, where he is basically self-hating himself as being an alien. He feels like, being an alien is wrong, or
it's because you have that whole perspective that a portion of the Superman fan base has, that Superman is what I can do, Clark is who I am.
Yeah, and it's so, like, honestly, that is such a backwards thinking
Mm-hmm.
because with Clark, I mean, Clark is, first of all, he's an adopted kid. He is, it's not his real name, you know, it's Martha Clark, her last name, and then, of course,
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Kent, their last names put together. And he's not their blood kid. Blood doesn't matter, but still, when you break it down, he's not their blood kid. He is not from this world at all. He's not from Earth. He's from a
Mm-mm.
total different planet. So it's kind of like you can't escape that. Those, and when people know that, when the whole world knows that, they are
Mm-hmm.
going to show you their true colors. And that is one thing that the difference, well, we'll get to that, but with comics still,
Mm-hmm.
how Bendis, even though it was,
Oh God.
and then the truth
All right.
storyline.
Hang
The
on.
truth,
You mentioned he who must not be named. So speaking of Snyderverse,
Why did you say that name?
yeah, the way, the two differences between those, truth story arc was to kill off New 52
yep,
Superman.
his wife's
But
trash.
that Superman was the modern golden age of one that was, he wasn't so much as ruthless, but he was the true standing up for the people. He had a backbone. He embraced his being an outsider, and he showed that um that it wasn't easy. And and the reaction, the real world reaction when his identity was revealed was exactly how it was in BVS. And
Yep.
well, you know,
Which
and it
here's the thing though, with speaking of that, is because if you notice, remember Jonathan Kent is in fact the one that warns Clark, "Hey, listen, dude, the world's not as accepting as it should be. They will fear you." Then also you have Batman. Batman in the Snyderverse represents mankind's attitude towards Superman, particularly in BVS, because remember, he's powerful enough that if there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty and destroy him, because we cannot afford to have any doubt as to whether or not this guy, with all the powers he has, if he wanted to, he could burn the whole place down. If there's any doubt that he is here for altruistic reasons, we have to take him out.
right. And with that, also factor in Lois,
Yeah.
how she really didn't do anything. Like it didn't show any true support. It was
Mm-hmm.
basically, especially the part where he rescues her from Africa. Was it Africa?
Yeah, it was Africa.
And how it's kind of like they had the conversation or whatever, but it's kind of brushed off. And at first, I remember reading an article and it said it was kind of like played as a joke, like you you killed these people for me, or hurt these people for me, but that shows the love, or how can you be Superman and still be with me? And Clark basically like is basically like, well, I care about you more than these people. And as long as he has the acceptance of Lois, it's like everything else doesn't matter. But then that's when you go into the territory of the toxic, evil, whatever Superman, because he isn't for the people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the difference between um even Bendy's version and the truth New 52 version, was because he pushed Diana away, and Lois was the one who um put his told his identity, but they wanted to play it out as like she actually cared for him, they were friends, or even Yang, he wanted to make it seem like it was romantic or whatever like that. But it's like she destroyed his life,
Mm-hmm.
telling his secret. And
That was the other part that really made me lose all respect for Lois Lane as a character, because ultimately it came down to I had a realization for that and Heroes in Crisis. She will do anything. She will screw over anyone if it gives her a story. She will.
right,
She doesn't care who she has to step on. That is ultimately why that at that moment, Truth. This is the one good thing I owe Truth. Then actually, thank you, Tomasi, and and thank you, Tom King, with Heroes in Crisis, is that it proved to me that yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be her husband, her close friend. She will destroy you if it gives her a good story because she's a selfish person, the way I see it.
right. And in Bendy's version, she basically, um, again, they wanted to have the whole romantic thing going on, or whatever. But she told Jimmy knew in New 52, and Clark told him. And that was a moment of them bonding and everything. But in Bendy's version, it was that Lois already told him, and it was like, really, she told him, and that was that was my decision.
Mm-hmm.
And also it was kind of like, again, she wasn't so supportive, and it made it feel like sometimes, within comics, and especially when you see that Diana has done it before, and then they turn around and kind of try to replicate that with Lois. It was kind of like, wasn't Heroes in Crisis before Bendis, or was
Yes,
it
it
after?
was. Yes, it was.
Okay,
I'm
so
fairly certain it was after. It was before.
before.
I'm gonna
Okay,
check that, but go ahead.
so the scene where Clark is trying to speak, do the press conference,
Yes.
and you have Diana silently right there, supportive of him, and she puts her hand on his shoulder to basically give him the silent support. Well, on with Bendis, when he does the press conference to show his to reveal his identity, he looks to Lois and she gives that silent support. And it's kind of like, this same kind of scene is replicating, what Diana gives him, and you're trying to, you know, give Lois that sort of, um, you know, what Diana has. And of course, I don't like that. Her truth was when he had her, telling Jimmy about his, you know, what he was supposed to tell him.
Mm-hmm.
And then also within the movies, you just like, she coddles him, but she doesn't actually give him any type of, you know, good advice or understanding that he needs. And that's part of the problem with these Superman movies, is that you want to have a romance, but the romance is so surface level that when you try to put it, um dive a little bit deeper with the issues, or the conflict, Lois is not the one that can actually handle that. And that also goes back to even New Frontier. In the comics, Diana was the one that talked to him, that told him about being a leader and stuff, but then they switched it over to Lois, and it's kind of like,
Oh my God.
that's very jarring to say. She has nothing to do with that. She has no idea of the stakes of the situation. So why do you have her saying Diana's lines? It didn't fit at all.
And you take out the kiss as well. So I'm like, oh God damn it, DC. You can't give me this one thing.
Right. Um, I mean, the movie is honestly still, when I saw
Still
the
good.
the movie, I actually still ship them. So
Well, yeah, there's no reason not to.
yeah, especially I shipped them when she still did the plane crash part
Mm-hmm.
of, and the when she told him that they were coming or whatever. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, yeah, that was a sweet moment. And
The way she calls him
but yeah,
Spaceman.
yeah, and it's kind of like, those parts they really couldn't they couldn't take out, they couldn't, um, I guess, kind of like how even the new Godzilla
Mm-hmm.
issue,
Mm-hmm.
how Diana is congratulating or whatever, spoiler or whatever,
It's been out for a
him
week.
trying to uh propose to Lois and everybody is, you know, it's the cliche of everybody being supportive or they are jokingly or something being serious going against it, you know, and he's basically on a I'm about to die. You think that it's going to be a happy fairy tale or something, but something is going to happen and he might die. Well, within those two panels of her saying that he means the world to her, and, you know, just that line is showing the sincerity of their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And they are only supposed to be like friends or whatever. But then you notice that the coloring is kind of like reddish pinkish in a sense of romantic type way.
Yeah, a lot. Well, it's all it gets into like whenever Superman and Wonder Woman are on the same panel, they do look like a married couple in the way like they hold each other, particularly in like Wonder Woman 800 or the Godzilla part where they're holding hands like this, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't
and
hold hands with
smiling.
my female friends like that.
Yeah, and smiling as yeah, the artist really conveys, you know, even though the writer didn't mean that intentionally, is like anything that you write with Clark and Diana, their conversations is always going to come across as romantic or something like that.
Yeah, because honestly, I gotta tell you, if you showed me that panel out of context and I didn't know any of this, I would assume he just did propose to Diana.
Yeah, or she is trying to just give him some support of something,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, but yeah, and the contrast with that with her and Lois was like he was prepared for this, but she's talking about a rain check or you know, because she's so
Mm-hmm.
wanting to have a
Selfish.
story,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and even in Bendy's run when all of the chaos or whatever was happening, she basically was asking for a story. And that's just her sole character is
The story.
she's is the story. And people want to say that it's, you know, she's driven, sure, you know, but at the same
At the
time,
expense of, it's funny how her examples of her being driven are often at other people's expense.
expense
That's the
exactly.
funny part. But so to conclude our movie discussion, I just want to briefly address the thing. I keep seeing people saying, "Oh my gosh, with James Gunn and Superman Legacy, DC is so saved." I also had someone say that it's okay if this movie doesn't do that well financially, and I'm like, in what universe is that okay?
Because the standards of, especially with DC movies, because they haven't had the success, the ultimate success. Like you started off with Man of Steel, and oh, well, first the Nolan movies set the bar,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the superhero movies for WB. And because that bar was so high, they expect it's Batman. They expected Superman to reach that, but he didn't even reach half of that, or you
Well,
know,
and even Sam Liu talked about this when he was on the show. He said a lot of what the way studios operate is that you have to show up and you have to overperform constantly, otherwise they will throw you to the side.
exactly. And these expectations are kind of like, well, first the content, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
that you are giving isn't what the general audience obviously is, you know, um, gravitating to. They aren't interested. They are constantly trying to reinvent the same thing. And that even Matthew Vaughn, his idea
Oh God.
was to basically just redo the Donner films, but in a modern way or whatever. But at the same, and even Zack Snyder, he said that that is what Superman is stuck with is you have to redo Donner's films. And it's kind of like, why? Why can't Superman, as a character that's supposed to be the man of tomorrow, as the character that's supposed to lead, why is he stuck in the past, especially with a movie that it's not it, it's not even like it'll be different if you had a movie like 1938, golden age, but that's not even the classic golden age Superman. I would take it if you were stuck on that, but the fact that you're basically stuck on a Superman that is just a cartoon character, um essentially, surface level, and the only thing they can bring up is the first movie, and it
Mhm.
really doesn't and it really doesn't um help the character. It doesn't build the character. All you see is maybe someone with a Superman t-shirt or something. But to actually want to pick up the comic books or to actually invest in the character, you don't have that. And WB has actually admitted that. And uh, the directors and the writers have admitted that. Even James Gunn, he was not interested in Superman at all. He did not want to do it,
Mhm.
but he was, I guess, convinced in 2021 to do a Superman movie. And I guess the thing is with PR, they love to lie
Mhm.
or or bend the truth. And when you look at the timeline of James Gunn's interview of he wasn't interested in Superman to finding out that he was actually writing the script for this the new movie, it's kind of like, you know, at that point you can tell that WB was desperate, that even with Cavill coming back, you still wanted someone to keep the character, you know, in that same Donner type, stereotype. That's what you wanted. And what I would have liked, though, and I'm still salty about it, was first the Flash ending to give Cavill
Mhm.
um, closure. And if he would have had at least one more movie to give him closure to
Yep.
show
Exactly.
this character go full circle. You can't say he went full circle with uh, the Snyder Cut, but you really just didn't have this solo Superman that he deserved. Man of Steel took Superman out of his comfort zone.
Mhm.
He answered and asked the questions that a lot of people do have for Superman's character. That you know, and the thing is, he was post-crisis Superman.
Yeah. Very much so.
And it's kind of like, so why aren't post-crisis fans, you know, why aren't they claiming him basically?
Because here's why. Because they have very selective memories as to what the post-crisis Superman is. They forget that that was arguably one of the most darkest periods of DC in terms of story. Like you had like wars and people dying constantly. What they really want is Silver Age Superman, which is the Reeves one. That's why they stay with the Reeves. Because when you think about it, the Reeves, if you take them, excuse me, and compare him
Oh,
to
bless you.
post. Thank you. If you take the Reeves Superman and compare him to post Crisis, they are two very different characters.
Yeah. Yes, the post-crisis, like you said, the Clark is who I am, Superman is what I can do. Self-hate, I don't want to be alien, I want to be human, that depression, whatever. And then you have the pre-crisis golden age Superman that, okay, first of all, the Kents were dead. In golden
Mm-hmm.
age, um he grew up with them, or he no, he was an orphan. I think that it was an origin of like a motorcyclist had him or something. He went to an orphanage. Then he had the Kents, but when he grew up, they died. Then, and he still became Superman though. he 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 honored them, their death, and he honored Krypton by becoming Superman himself.
Mhm.
And he took down. So the Superman that we saw in New 52 basically retold exactly what the Golden Age was.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then you have the post crisis where he has his parents still. He's spoon fed. He's spoon fed. Every everyone supposedly loves him. He's this all American. You know, I'm not alien. I'm just this. Even with the glasses, I like the glasses, and I like it in the context of it being like this inside joke type thing, like kind of with Diana. She was basically like, "You can't recognize me," and it was just a funny joke.
Well,
But
also here's the thing that also it doesn't look good on Lois because at least in the Snyderverse, Lois figured out that Clark Kent was Superman pretty freaking fast. Where in the comics, in every iteration of Lois, there's been there's been a period where she has no idea that Clark is Superman, even though for the most part he makes it pretty obvious.
or even that she's close. Even in the Death of Superman animated movie, she was close to Superman. Supposedly, everything was done off screen. So she was close to Superman, and then she was dating Clark, but you still couldn't tell, like, he was the same guy, which is very, very weird.
You spend
It,
all your time with one of these dudes, and you can't tell that they're the same guy.
yeah, and with the headcanons of some of the fans, is that she does know, she's just waiting for him to tell her, um, or sh or she trying to figure it out, or she has figured it out, but Clark is gaslighting her. I mean, either way, it's still basically a toxic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how you flip it or whatever. This relationship has been toxic throughout this whole, you know, 85 plus years. I I I just don't like at all the revisionism of that this is a romance, this timeless iconic romance. But when you really and when you point the problematic things out, they say, well, that was in this era, or that was this era. But at the same time, when it's stuff that fits their agenda, they will claim that error. So
Like the whole, oh, Lois had a top selling series in the 60s.
right, well, we can say in the 60s that top selling series was called Superman's Girlfriend, and then within the book, it was just her, doing a lot of shenanigans to get Superman to marry her. That,
Yeah, if she's this big character from female empowerment, that's the thing about Wonder Woman. Actually, she doesn't have to go through all this stuff to be this this awesome female and to get Superman's attention. She has it.
right, but that with the fact that it's so easily for Diana to get Clark's attention, is that they have to basically write him out of character, oblivious to her, and they have to be distance apart, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But with Lois, yeah, it's even with the Golden Age, how they want to say that Superman has always been a romance story or a love story. And it's like, well, this is one screwed up love story, because Lois despised Clark. She hated him. I mean, like,
Yeah, she did.
despised
And
him.
here's the thing. I brought that up to someone, and they said, "Well, yeah, but as she got to know, but it's like when she found out that like Superman was Clark, she got this appreciation for Clark." But I'm like, no, she. So basically, you're still admitting to me that she only cared about him when she found out he was Superman. So,
Right.
if
Yeah,
anything, it makes her look very shallow.
yeah. It, they want to change it to where she likes Clark first. But at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, the only reason why she likes Clark first now is because so many people have pointed out that she hated him in the first place. So now you want to turn, but then she ends up finding out that he's Superman. So it's basically like it it's a it's just like the Clark is who I am, Superman is what I can do. It's a turnaround in a very, very twisted way that she gets basically lucky of liking Clark and oh, all of a sudden he's Superman. But no, that is their way to go around her original character, you know, because exactly she is shallow. So it seemed like a win-win for her, you know, but we know the truth. Then you
Oh,
have her
yes, we do.
you know, even in the way when she was trying to scoop a story, she even tried to drug Clark. You know, it was very like if you think this romance, you know, it's more so like some sociopathic uh serial killer type thing that I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. This is fatal attraction type stuff or something. Um then with the silver, like we said, that um Lois comic, you know, was her doing stuff to get him to marry her. Then you have the 80s where Barn Burn basically he wanted he is an immigrant himself, which is why I do not understand why he wanted to change Superman. If you are an immigrant, you would want to stay in line with the original, you know, plot of the character.
Well, not only that, what's actually kind of funny when you look at when you look at Lois Lane from his series, she is really mean to Clark. Like, you want to talk about like a toxic individual? Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and they want to romanticize that. They want to say that Clark basically likes that. He likes being talked down to, likes being belittled because she grounds him. You know, when grounding someone, first of all, he doesn't need grounding
Thank you.
because he grew up with the Kents, whether dead or alive. They
And
still
second
taught
off,
him.
if without the grounding of Lois, Superman turns into a dictator and loses his humanity, why are you still? Why is he a superhero? If he's that
Yeah,
close to turning into a dictator, then humanity should actually wipe him out.
I mean that's basically like Omni Man type stuff, you know.
Then
It's
thank you for proving Lex Luthor right.
yeah, it's like he is actually deep down a villain. You know, he doesn't have a good heart when again Superman is supposed to be, yeah, he does have the powers of a god, but that doesn't define him.
Mm-hmm.
He has the power within his heart of gold. This, you know, selfless person that will sacrifice anything, that becomes a hero, that becomes an inspiration to people because that is just his good nature, not because of a love interest. He's not Superman because of Lois. That has never been at all.
Nope.
So post crisis really has damaged Superman in a long term type way throughout, where you have, you know, Donner basically influenced it. Then you have the 90s Dean Cain show too. You have the 80s part where he, you know, self-loathing, you know, hating his immigrant roots, and it's kind of like, or refugee, but it's like, why though? Again, this character is supposed. First of all, the character is created by two Jewish boys,
Mm-hmm.
and with everything within that history, you really want to take that away.
Mm-hmm.
Disrespect, you know, the power of his creation by placing this character into a society view that is so toxic, so discriminatory, so unaccepting. Where does your mind go? And even now, so many other writers, especially the Action Comics writer, he he did very good with War World, but with his whole, it was an issue where he says that he does the Clark is who I am, or whatever, Clark is my name, Superman, what I can do. And then he praises, Lois and say that Lois coined the Superman name or whatever like that, and tries to, big her up for that. First of all, a name is a name. So to give her high praise or whatever, to say that she gave him the Superman name, honestly,
Well,
that's
second off,
irrelevant.
he's a man that has superpowers. What should we call him?
Yeah, and he has an S on his chest.
Yeah, so it wasn't like she solved nuclear fission.
Exactly. It's not like she, and the thing is, she put it in an article. It's kind of like, when someone tweets out in modern day how we have these terminologies, uh like um the thing that comes to on fleek or whatever, those kind of or no cap, something like that, catchphrases or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The people who made these up, yeah, they do get the praise, or they do get the, acknowledgement that they've made the terminology of that. But it doesn't go to their heads like like you said, they've, um, discovered some type of, cure for some type of disease or something like that. It's not that. She just wrote an article and wrote Superman or whatever, or this Superman, and that was it. So people started calling him that. But don't give her credit like that, like she's just been there, his inspiration. And like I said, you're looking at him just as a god when you are taking away the fact that he grew up, you know, like which way do you want to go? Do you want to say that he grew up and he's just, a kid from Kansas? Or do you want to say that he, when you tried to big up Lois, that he is a god with powers and needs to be grounded? You know, so that is where post crisis is, the dilemma of that. Then you have New 52.
Yep, and I'm getting to that. So before we get into this, let's talk about. So we kind of talked about why it was needed, but what exactly was the new 52? Well, as we know, Flashpoint was actually happening now. And I believe the way Jim Lee tells the story is that they were at a publishing summit trying to decide what to do about Superman. And they were like, maybe we should update the character. So they started playing around with like getting rid of the mirrors to Lois and doing the whole the Kryptonian armor. And then they were like, let's do a line-wide reboot and just apply all these principles we did to Superman to everyone. So they... Man, Jeff Johns really got screwed with this one. They were like, hey, Jeff, your story now has to reboot the entire DC universe. So can you do that? And Jeff's like, okay. And he did so. And then basically what it was, treat it like we never published comics before. Like we're just starting now. All the characters are younger. They're more realistic. Actually, speaking of the Snyderverse, this is one of the similarities that the Snyderverse has with the comics is that it's a more realistic take on these characters. And you know what? It's so like bananas.
Right. You have well, first, the comic division was in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And it had been for a very long time. Basically, what killed, almost killed comics was the death of Superman. That whole gimmick, trying to have, well, the reason for the storyline, it wasn't for this actual, like, important purpose, but to buy time for, to sync up with the Dean Cain show of that Lois and Clark getting married. So they wanted to actually have it in the comics too. And with buying time with that, they decided to just kill him off as a gimmick. And once he come back, they get married or whatever. But not only with seeing that he came back, it basically the market, just plummeted. But you also have a marriage that basically they wanted to get rid of it like a year afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly.
they basically saw no point. And with the Lois and Clark show, the ratings of that show actually plummeted too after they got married. So it's basically like every time they try to have Lois and Clark together as this married couple, or the interest wanes fast, because like I said, it's very surface level. She's just a love interest, but once you try to put them as an established couple, is flatline. It's basic. There's no challenge there. She knows his, you know, she knows his identity, so there's no drama there. She, they want to make it seem like this is a perfect romance that doesn't have any challenges, that doesn't have any conflict, because when you do put conflict in their romance, you can start poking holes in it. You can see how toxic it is. You can see how contradictory it is, or that they aren't a good fit together. But when you know, write Clark as just like this bubbling type glute, that needs Lois to basically have him on a leash, or he'll, turn into a villain, or he needs her to coddle him, or belittle him. They take that as thinking that that's female empowerment, and that's a romance, that you want to strive for or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And see, honestly, the way they could use Lois to effectively is not as his wife or girlfriend, as the reporter that's constantly trying to expose Superman's identity, because you could have that whole dynamic of, will she reveal who Superman is to the world? And that would, you could make her like a human antagonist to Superman, not like she tries to actually kill him or anything like Lex does, but she tries to reveal his identity for the story reasons, because that's 100% what Lois would do, and she's done in the past, like with Truth, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And I mean, when there was I don't know where this came up, but it's topics that just come out of the blue. But it was talking about Clark's best friend. And it was basically because Lois is his wife, she should be his best friend. And yes, that's true that your spouse in general is supposed to be your best friend and everything like that. But they aren't best friends. They aren't even friends.
No.
Clark doesn't confide in her. He doesn't, their relationship isn't even honest. It's the only honest thing, or that he is honest with her sometimes, is that he has no one else. Like, even with Diana, he has to be distant from her. And that was his best friend, even with Post Crisis. Post Crisis, in the 80s, Clark and Diana was supposed to be a couple. But of course, John ruined that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like that they somehow redid it to where it was just a relationship with unresolved feelings, but they were friends. And when you see their progression uh as friends, you see the genuine love there, and you're like, why isn't he with her? you know, if he can be honest with her, but he can't with Lois. Even with the Death of Superman animated movie, um, Diana basically called him out on being untruthful with Lois and everything. And the way Tomasi wrote it, Clark was very much an a-hole. And his whole attitude with Diana was so antagonistic and so distant. But she called him out, and he wanted and had him say that he trusts Lois knows him more than anyone else. And it's like, how does she know you, but she doesn't even know the real you as Superman? She doesn't
If
even
she
know your
knows you
identity.
more than anyone else, why doesn't she know what you actually do for a living?
Yeah, you're trying to. It's a lot of all talk but no show, and that has been the Lois and Clark relationship for so long. Is that so? With the marriage, they have tried to make it work during the early 2000s, and but you still have those moments where it is a question of would he be better with Lena or with Diana? And the thing is, of course, it would have been Diana. And you have these writers like Rucka or Kelly that wanted to, you know, put a wedge in that or whatever. Then you have where sacrifice, how Clark's attitude towards Diana, you
Good
know,
God.
they wanted to, because their friendship was so solid, and how people still shipped them instead of Lois, and how Lois was unlikable and nobody cared for her. They had to, basically pull apart their friendship, Diana's friendship. But obviously it didn't work. The comics were still dwindling. Early 2000s, the early tens, it was terrible. So 2010, you have on top of that, you have a mega blockbuster with Batman. And Batman has been basically the top dog since the 80s, thanks to Frank Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, if we have one character like this that is not only the top dog for comics, but also the movies are, booming, we need the whole line across the board to be just like that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Batman evolved. He wasn't even with his relationship with Catwoman, it still had this, the cat and mouse chase or cat and bat chase.
Mm-hmm.
It still has this, sexy vibe to it, this mystery. And yeah, you're romanticizing toxic, dysfunction. But that is what Batman is anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
Plus
that
the fact,
works.
and the reason why Batcat kind of works compared to other romances that Batman can be in, is because she's relatively in Batman's world, like fully. And because the thing about Batman, and this, this is what makes his character interesting, but also a ding on his character is that he will, and this is why I tell all the Wonder Bat people, there's no way Batman will accept anything that could possibly distract from his mission. He's not, because he is 100% devoted to the mission. They always say, well, Diana can change him. DC is not going to let Batman change in any way. I got news for you. That ain't happening anytime soon.
No, it's actually changing Diana. And the thing is, the Batman editorial does not want really any like superpowered beings within Gotham.
Mm-mm.
Gotham is
No.
Batman's home base. Catwoman, her home base is Gotham. Their goal is for Gotham. And that's what brings them together. That's pretty much why Nightwing and Starfire aren't together, because the editorial doesn't want, Starfire in Gotham.
Well, here's the thing
Um,
about that. They have a point, because if you have super people in Gotham and they're more effective at being crime fighters than Batman and Nightwing, it kind of upstages Batman and Nightwing in their own books.
right. So you would have to nerf the superpowered, the being, even with Superman and Batman having, world finest, um, storylines. Notice how even if it's in Gotham, it's basically like it's more that Clark Kent, like the reporter is kind of, within the context of the story, or it's kind of like how the World Finest Book now, even if it's in Gotham, the villains, it's set in the past. It's basically set. It's supposed to be set with this continuity, but it seemed like it's something totally different with their power levels. So Clark's power level seemed like it's more golden age. So that works,
Mhm.
Even being in Gotham, it just or basically like Super Friends type level.
Mhm.
That's
Ye-
what that book
Yeah,
is.
and that's partly why it's actually really cool. But I've heard great things about that World's Finest book.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's pretty much reminiscent to Super Friends. And
In a good way too, because it's allowed
yeah,
to get like dark and stuff, but it maintains that thing about it. Plus, Dan Mora's artwork on he's one of the artists that I think is going to be remembered as one of like the rising stars of DC Comics. There's like Dan Mora. There's it's another. I'm trying to. The point is like there are a few like artists
that
nowadays that I
stand
think,
out.
yeah, that really stand out, that are gonna be like they're gonna be on that Jason Fabok, Jim Lee level of fantastic comic book artists,
I
and
mean, DC
100.
definitely needs it
DC
because
definitely needs it, particularly now with Ghost Machine. But
yeah,
that was that had to be like I imagine the DC like PR team woke up one day, saw that, and they're like, oh no.
yeah. I mean, for basically your top all stars, a lot of DC's all stars, they are leaving, or for creator owned, or just something totally different.
Mhm,
And for well, first DC, like we said, they're broke.
mhm.
They are wanting something for nothing, or nothing for something. And what I mean by that is basically going cheap,
Mhm.
but they expect the fans to,
Accept it.
buy this. Yeah, and accept it. And it's kind of like when, especially your Twitter crowd, when your Twitter crowd is now like um the Alan Scott thing that's happening now.
Mhm.
He The whole selling point of his character is his sexuality.
Which, to be
And
clear, you could tell a compelling story with that, but if that's your selling point of the book, you're gonna limit who's gonna be interested in the book. Even if, let me put it this way, even if the story is not like 100% a gay romance, even if it's not, even if the story is not even a romance, I'm not gonna like to differentiate between that, because the thing about Superman and Wonder Woman, it's not, yeah, it's a romance book, but that's not the main point of the book.
right.
There's still the action of it, and if this were sold as 100% just a romance book behind Superman and Wonder Woman, it wouldn't have sold as well as it did.
And no, it's just about two people connecting. That
Mhm.
whether the thing is, whether they are friends, or as a couple, their chemistry, their connection resonates with people.
Mhm.
Um, with posting the Godzilla panel
Yeah.
and the caption, it was that, even as best friends, how supportive they are. And
Mhm.
it was one comment that tagged their best friend, and it was like, this is us, and to see that love
Yeah,
that people
exactly.
have, it's like that is what we love about their relationship, is that no, we aren't solely, yeah, of course, the romance is a bonus. We want them to be together down the line or something like that.
But the whole
But
thing is that you get to see like how close they are, even as friends, and how again like supportive they are, and
yeah,
it's kind of like the way Bruce and Clark are sometimes depicted.
yeah, they are brothers. They just like how we talked in the Trinity episode. Clark and Bruce are brothers. Clark and Diana are the complicated, unresolved feeling best friends
They're
with
the best
benefits.
friends that clearly have feelings for each other.
Yeah, and that is something that's still so beautiful, and that that okay, I will root for them because down the line somewhere they will get together.
Hmm.
But to see their relationship um progress, to evolve, to how it goes, that's what basically the meat of the story that we want to see. And them getting together is like the satisfying conclusion or the ending of a new beginning. And and especially that capped that all off was Kingdom Come. That really showed, especially with it being a post crisis, the DC, ending. And yeah, that made sense because during post crisis, they were best friends. They did have these unresolved feelings. Everything happened. They did have conflict, but they were still supportive of each other. And then they got, well, Mark, he says that they don't get married, but on the, like, Clark will only get married once and it will only be to Lois or something like that. I'm like, no. But so basically, you're saying that, Diana is basically just his baby mama because, I mean, she gave him 5 kids. So,
I think at one point, the traditional man that Clark is, he would have at least said, "Hey, even if they weren't married at the end of Kingdom Come, hey, Diana, listen, we've been together for, let's say, a crap ton of years. Have you thought of maybe doing that? Or like, have you considered maybe at one point we would get married?"
yeah, I mean, Diana, she she's a committed person. Marriage, especially nowadays, people are feeling like marriage is unless you have that person, marriage is a piece of paper nowadays in reality,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't last. It for some reason it's like a curse.
And
But
by the way, I wanted to bring up for this for a while. So I was at my LCS and I picked up this random Superman trade called "Our Worlds at War," and then I'm flipping through it, and then I see
oh
this
my
scene
god.
that you had given. I forgot that this was actually in there. So as I'm reading through it, I'm like, "Wait a second here."
Yeah, yes, that storyline is, yeah, it very much tells, basically why we are the fans that we are.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
the bomb goes off, and he's like, "Okay, you guys take care of the Justice League. I got to get her out of here."
yeah, it it and especially when in later issues of that, when he's like, no, not Diana, and he's ignoring Lois too.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, "Not Diana," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay." Here's my problem with DC. They're so uncommitted to this because if they just committed wholly to the Lois thing, fine. But they keep putting they keep going the opposite direction too with with Diana by putting obvious stuff, and to a degree, that person who commented about the whole best friend thing, I'm like, you actually have a point now, because it's like, wait a second here. If you just committed to him being with Lois, that would be one thing. But no, you keep dipping your toe in the other pool, and to a certain degree, it gets kind of annoying.
Yeah, that person definitely had a point because it's kind of like you have this woman that you supposedly love or in love with. And that's the one thing that Lois fans, they really just say how Clark is a wife guy or something like that, and how he's
Mm-hmm.
so in love with Lois. But when you read it, it's kind of like they, again, it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of trying to force it. It's that. And it's such a surface level romance that it's like, okay, what actually makes this so special? But then when you go and read him with Diana, especially with those moments of, you know, the conflict of war, or, those dire moments, and she's there to give him that, pep talk that he needs. Like when Bruce died,
Mhm.
and Diana was there, and she sat with him, and she asked him, "Is he okay?" And he said, "I just want to, sit here." And she told him, "It's okay. Like, I'll sit here with you."
I have the issue where that happened, by the way, and I'm like, oh god, DC, because it gets annoying because again, just commit to a pathway because this is DC's legacy, pun intended, of these characters going back and forth constantly, whether or not it's with the movies with the Snyderverse or the new 52 into Rebirth, even pre-new 52. They've been doing this.
Yeah. And well, they tried to commit, especially with Rebirth,
Well, speaking
when
of Rebirth,
especially because of John. And it the thing is, Lois Close fans, they think that they won something. And it's the narrative of New 52 was a failure, and especially for Clark and Diana's romance, and how, we've seen it where people are now picking up the book and they're saying how they wish that was Lois instead, or they're reading the book and saying that they like it, but in turn, because they want to fit in with the crowd of hating it, they saying, well, it's this and that, but you know, I liked it, but I still hate the romance or something, something like that. Um, so with Rebirth, the reason for it was they screwed up New 52 with converted convergence and DCU.
Mhm.
They and Dan Jargens, he brought up the idea of a son for, you know, and Didio, he wanted to bring back the Batman and Superman Super Sons from, I guess, the 70s, that comic, and especially with Damien. So basically, it's Damien having a playmate, and Dan Jargens, he brought up the idea, and so, I think at first it was supposed to be just like as an Elseworld, but then they just completely, you know, bulldozed over everything, wanting it to be in um in the main line.
Mhm.
And the narrative that they went for, of course, is to say that the New 52 failed, the relationship, bringing back the original and bringing back the real Superman and everything like that. But again, with New 52 Superman, he was the real Superman. He was that modernized golden age. Then you go back to the status quo plus a kid that made you reboot in the first place. And then Dan, the deal, he regrets it. And now you're gone from DC, just, completely. And in one of his interviews, he basically let it be known, you know, it's kind of like it was a relief to be away from DC,
Mhm.
or that he has no type of like concern of whatever's going on. And what he left them with, though, was the idea of 5G, which wrote them in a corner because they wanted Clark to become a dictator.
And they
And
wanted Wonder Woman to stay dead, I think.
yeah, and then they wanted John, Yara, and Jace to take over.
Which would be
So
stupid, but okay.
right, and it was in Damien to become a villain. He was and that's another thing, is the Al Ghul's. I know that they are assassins. I know that, but at the same time, they go into very subtle racism with them, like that is like the bad version of you know Damien,
Mhm.
and that really gives a con uh a view of DC, of how they see outsiders, of
Mhm.
how they see, anyone that's not American, that they are bad, you know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
with Damien, especially with Talia, because Grant Morrison, he he has kind of apologized for it, but at first Bruce, he loved Talia, and they were like, I think it was son of the demon,
Mhm.
and with having a child, it was like consensual. But then Grant Morrison came and he changed it into non-consensual, and now you have
Which was icky.
Talia. Yeah, and now you have Talia labeled, as a rapist or something, and that's not her character at all. And
No.
and and you also, not only that, but you made her out to be a bad mother, that she didn't care for Damien,
And
that
she
she
even
just
tried to
wanted to.
kill him.
Yeah, and it's like that is not how Talia
Mm-mm.
was at first. So why would you? Not only is that sexist, misogynistic, but it's also very racist.
Mhm.
Why would you change her character, to be bad, but then you want Bruce to basically be like this golden boy? Of course he's American, he's rich and everything like that too. So that is what you are basically showing. And Damien, if he you know, goes towards his mother's, heritage, he becomes bad. He becomes the big bad villain. If he stays as Robin and becomes Batman, he's this good, you know, uh, hero.
Mhm.
And with with the 5G um, plans, it was also that way with Clark too. I don't know how, you want it. I think again, it was Lois dying that he becomes a dictator. And basically,
Yeah.
John has to fight him,
I
and
I thought it was John that was supposed to become the dictator.
no, it was Clark. It was Clark.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
he was going to have the Kingdom Come S2. So it's kind of like, not only are you ruining Kingdom Come, because that S, you know,
It's very specific.
signifies, yeah, it's very specific, and you want to put him in a dictatorship, and that's not at all the character. And people are going to think that Kingdom Come Superman is that, and it's not. It's a total different version. So
So your character assassinating one of your most popular stories.
right, and I think Kara too was supposed to be like aligning herself with Clark, as so basically,
Oh
because of
God.
John because of John being half human, he was supposed to be good, so
Well,
he's
that's
the.
xenophobic.
Yeah, exactly. The Superman line, Rebirth, was very xenophobic. When you actually, and post crisis too, when you actually, analyze a lot of what goes on within those stories, especially Clark's kind of like, he doesn't want to be alien, or is very xenophobic, and especially with trying to say that Lois is superior because she's human, she grounds him. And Diana being the thing is with Diana, she's very much an earth woman. It's
Yeah.
not like the island isn't on another planet, it's on Earth. It's just that it's secluded, it's magically hidden.
And wait, my whole thing is that if you have all these powers, somehow that makes you subhuman. What?
Yeah, yeah.
That makes
But
no sense.
you also have the double standard of, if Clark and Diana are together, then they eugenics, whatever. Um, but the thing is, that's Maxima. Maxima is the one that wanted like superpowered babies and to take over the world.
Hmm.
So Diana has never wanted that. She wanted, yeah, she had the idea of marriage and kids with Clark, but like marriage, kids, and we can, you know, grow old and like after 1,000 years and sit on a porch or whatever in
Mhm.
space. That's basically her idea. But Maxima was, we're gonna create super babies and we're gonna take over the whole universe type thing. Um, but with um going back to 5G and that whole plan, basically it was dead on arrival because future state didn't it didn't pan out how they wanted it to. Sales were, again, plummeting. Rebirth only lasted for a year and a half. A lot of people started leaving, you know. So yeah, so it really just crashed and burned before it even began. And now you see how pointless it was to just screw over New 52. And the reason why the marriage is back is only for John. It's not really, you have writers who try to make it work, but you can tell it's just that they are writing it in a sense of it's just the status quo and it's kind of like there.
Well,
But it's
also remember there was that period in the Bendis Superman era where Lois came back from space and didn't tell Clark she was back because she wanted her space.
yeah, she want and then for Clark to act so like needy of her, it was very unromantic and just so, I don't know, it was
You
just,
turned Superman into a super simp. That's what you did.
yeah, yeah, it even Lois is so toxic, but it's kind of like, it's very much like the Will and Jada type thing that's happening right now
Mhm.
in reality of how Jada Smith is being very toxic and belittling Will Smith and everything.
That's a comparison I never thought I'd hear on the show.
I mean, go. I'm telling you, go read it, and then Will Smith to be like, "I love my wife, and we're gonna make this work," and it's kind of like, dude, she is basically dogging, she is dragging your name through the mud, dogging you out publicly,
That's your
embarrassing
cue to
you.
cut and run, sir.
Exactly. And that's exactly basically what Lois and Clark is to me. That is the perfect comparison of reality. And you want to romanticize that. That is not good. If people can see that in reality of a relationship that displays that, why would you want to put it in, I don't care if it is fiction. You don't want that in, showing kids that. You just
You
don't.
you don't want to encourage that type of behavior, in other words.
Yeah, relationships is just not, even seeing some Superman fans like say, what's the perfect ending for Superman? And it's DC 1 million. And basically I think he turns into like what, gold robots or something like that.
He
And he
turns
puts,
completely gold because I think that's actually All-Star Superman.
oh, well, he even with All Star, Lois was not likable in that. Like she, you know, really didn't care for Clark like that. I think, and didn't believe that Clark was even Superman, and she did get the powers for a day for her birthday, but it wasn't really, you know, romantic in that way. They only used the romance of her getting the powers and having the kiss where she looks like Supergirl, so
Which is creepy enough considering he sleeps with this woman.
yeah. And then he dies. So then you have
Well,
DC 1
dies.
million. Yeah, then you have DC 1 million where she's dead and he brings back her soul, put it in like a robot and say like he has his wife back. And it just seems so inhumane that Clark would, if Lois and Clark is supposed to be like this human couple, this grounded couple, why does he do things that aren't very human? When she dies, he doesn't grieve like, he turns into a dictator. If he wants to, like what Tom King wrote in his 8 pager Superman special, that he gave her immortal juice.
Which I'm like, no, we don't need immortal Lois Lane.
And it's kind of, but more to that is that, okay, if you can give her immortal juice, you could have found a way to cure a disease or something, but yet you are being selfish and you only are curing one person. Or,
Yeah.
Just like with the drowned event, he let knowingly he let people drown to take her all the way to the fortress, just to save one person. You let thousands drown just for one person. That's totally insane. Then you
Plus,
have
also add on. I want to add on one. When you get the whole Superman, Lois and Clark book, I mention this every week because it still annoys the ever living crap out of me. So post Crisis Clark, the one everyone loves, has been on Earth since the New 52. And I get the dark side. He doesn't want to get involved with that because the Justice League has that. I got that. Then the crime syndicate shows up and says, "Okay, we killed the Justice League." As far as he knows, that's true. Doesn't do a thing. Okay, that gets resolved. The freaking Anti-Monitor invades. He doesn't do anything. I have to go protect my family. Dude, I'm pretty sure that if the Anti-Monitor wins, and you know how powerful this dude is because you fought him, I'm pretty sure if the Anti-Monitor wins, Lois and John are just going to die anyway. So why don't you go actually do something?
Yeah, that exactly. Even with the sequel, that for some reason they were granted.
Because DC, because there was a certain portion of the fan base that was pissed off that John was aged up and they wouldn't bring him back. So they're like, let's get more stories about John. But I'm like, still, my point still stands.
But the thing is, even with John, even with him aged up or as a kid, his character did not bring any type of new fan base. Even if it was like a new, it it didn't balance out how New 52 did. New
Well,
52 brought the older fans did leave because they felt betrayed, but it was basically post-crisis whiners, but it balanced out with newer fans coming in towards New 52. But
well,
how they
the other thing is like going back to it's that Superman story real quick. The other thing about it is wait, did I seriously forget what I was going to say? All right, never mind. Continue on, Brit.
oh, well, what I was saying was just that New 52 brought in a, you know, basically balanced out the scale
Mm-hmm.
of fan losses or whatever. Rebirth, the way that it was promoted was a throwback, was going back to the original of what everyone loved and everything like that. But again,
It did
what
so.
everyone loved back then was not selling. It's like
These
nothing,
companies
it's not
are see,
clicking.
here's the thing. Here's what people don't realize. For some reason they don't get it. That and actually Sam Liu and I talked about this on the interview, which I very much enjoyed this part, where we basically said, and this goes back again to the DC Superpowered app when they were the documentary, and they were talking about how could you kill Superman, and he goes, I didn't kill Superman, you did. If you're not going to support the book, if you're not going to water the plant, it's going to wither and die. It's not my fault. It's your fault. That's just the way it's going to work. If you're not going to pick up the book, if you're not going to support the current status quo, it's going to change. Get over it.
Yeah, and this is why DC has relaunches every 2 to 3 years. The Action Comics writer, Philip Kennedy,
Yeah, I
he
love that
said
guy.
that he said that he wanted to be on Superman for Action Comics for years, like the same as I think Dan Jargens was on it for a long time or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. He wanted that same run, but now he's off of it after 3 years. It's like obviously that they want a change of direction. They want something different, you know, um, or that even with the sales, how they promote these books online, and you see the number of likes and the comments and all of that. But then you go to, well, first they say that, like, the charts that come out now, which is true, they don't have a significant indicator anymore about sales.
Hmm.
So we really don't know. You see rankings and everything, but I don't know. You can kind of tell still you know, where a book is placed. So when you see Action Comics is basically, it teeters, sometimes in the top 50, but only if it's like some type of special, you know, with a whole bunch of variant covers. But then you have, when all of that is done, you have it basically at the bottom of top 50 and dwindling down to even, ranking within the 100s. So yeah, the Superman books aren't that stable, and the fans, they've lowered the expectation, is that if it goes from 40K, they think that is something. They think that even if it's 50K, you know, but you have Superman and Wonder Woman's book that did 100K, and it's kind of like, oh, this is a failure for some reason, or nobody likes this, or whatever, or this relationship is bad. Apparently not, if it did 100K.
Yeah,
But
if it sells well, they have to consider sales first. Because here's what people don't understand: DC ain't a charity; it's a business.
yeah, but even DC forgets that it's a business,
Well,
because
yeah, exactly.
they are, it feels like now they are going within, like, an agenda of, like I said, social media,
Hmm.
and what social media wants, how they can get the number of likes, the number of, posts, kind of like the covers that they have. They are going with memes, how they turn,
Hmm.
with Damien, he turned into that cat meme, and
Or like,
Nightwing.
yeah, how many covers highlight Nightwing's glutes?
Right. Or like New 52, they did have the special covers every month they had the theme covers. And but it was fun, and the art was just fantastic.
I love the
So,
one that they did for Superman and Wonder Woman. Where was this? But the Flash that like wrapped them all up in the lasso and is running away with a big grin on his face.
yeah, that one, or the selfie, or Darwin Cook's one,
I love Darwin
variant.
Cook's one.
Yeah, that one is so beautiful.
I'm gonna find
Um
it.
uh you have those special covers, but with the solicits that was actually out, that was released yesterday, they actually tried to have like selfie covers, but you can tell, like, it just seems so stiff.
Forced.
Yeah, it didn't it wasn't fun looking how the New 52 had them.
Yeah.
And even with the romantic covers that they try to have for some couples, they don't feel, it just feels very generic.
Plus, remember,
um
and I highlighted this last week on the. Everyone's talking about the Superman cover of him intimately with Lois Lane. His hand is not. It looks like his hand is actively. It looks like he's actively trying to not touch her. That ain't romantic.
I mean, I really don't see the romance within that cover, because the way he's drawn, his face, it doesn't look romantic. It looks very much like he's, like, in a like an awkward, you know, kind of shy or something,
Mm-hmm.
or it's in a way of like how he would react to Cat Grant or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very romantic in a sense of how, you see Kenneth Rocafort when he did the Young Romance cover with Superman and Wonder Woman.
I love that
It,
one.
it
That
yeah,
one is very.
and
That one, they are passionately holding on to each other.
right, they don't have that with the couples now. And even, by the way, the Valentine's like specials that they
Mhm.
have now, the Superman and Wonder Woman Young Romance one from New 52 was actually like their top selling one.
I wonder
After
why.
that, right after that, I think the one Space, Love in Space or whatever with Lois on the cover with Darkseid, it actually did only half or so that the Superman and Wonder Woman Young Romance did.
But by the way,
It's
here are some examples of like those variant covers we had. Like there was the bombshell one. These designs I think are pretty cool. But you had this one again, the
yeah,
selfie one. You also had the zombie one, which I thought was really cool. Even the zombie starts showing more affection than Lois.
yes, that one is so
What
creepily.
the heck?
It's so good. Like,
You know it's bad when the literal undead are more affectionate than you are.
right. And the thing is, his hand is on her, thigh, even
It's
as a
very
zombie.
much like gripping her thigh, and I'm like, oh
Yeah,
wow. I'm trying to find the volume one on DC Universe so we can check those. But yeah, it's like literally the embodiment of the dead is more affectionate than you are.
yeah. It's very telling, very telling. Um, so yeah, with the whole rebirth thing, like I said, the marriage was not a victory of coming back. It was only for John to be in the main line, and even their mainline history is just totally screwed. That they, cowered out saying that, everything is canon, but
Oh
like you said, if
god,
everything is
that
canon,
that BS thing right there.
yeah, everything cannot be canon because you're already contradicting yourself because of, look at Chris Kent, you know, um
Yeah. So
Zod,
wait, so Batman was a vampire and then a Green Lantern?
yeah, or Wonder Woman, especially her history is just totally messed up. You want her in the JSA during the Second War, but then she's supposed to be like this fresh off the boat, within post crisis of her, being not on the Justice League yet, but she's the youngest,
Yeah,
member.
she goes back to the island, and conveniently, that's when Steve Trevor shows up. But here's some more of the covers, by the way, that we saw. I love this one.
Yes, that looks like, the Greek,
Hmm.
you know, really invoking that. I
And then we got the Shane Davis one. I really dig the how his stuff always looks shiny and like it's glowing.
Yeah, yeah. That
And
one,
then
um
and then this
this
one.
one, I can't believe that the controversy of that one, honestly, it was a lot more with this one. It was her, with the cape. But I wish that the one that was actually chosen, I do like this one.
Hmm.
Or that we would have saw like a final product or something, or a complete sketch of they are sitting on top of the Daily Planet, and well, Clark is laying down on like a, the litter or whatever, and Diana is turned around, so he's like with his head resting in his hand, and his eyes obviously are glowing and glowing like on her backside, and she's kind of like shooing him to stop it.
Ah,
So, you know,
that's a good one.
those get, and then it's one where Diana is wrapped in a cape and it looks like she's on another planet or something
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
And it's one more, but yeah, those were some pretty good ones. I really wish someone would, sketch that to be something final, especially the one where they're playfully, he's, I guess, ex-Asian, or, heat visioning her butt. That's
Steampunk.
very playful. These covers really had a playfulness to it, and it was a young romance. It
I
was
love
something
this
that
one.
was, yeah, DC had so much fun during New 52.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
did.
with when you search through Instagram, you don't really see many people posting the comics anymore. Like they post
It's
panels
just
here and there.
isolated panels and then some covers. Like legit, when I published the Lois is useless video, this person's way of arguing against me was not bringing up any counterpoints, was just sending me like panels of Lois and Clark kissing, and I'm like, this is the weakest type of argumentation I have ever seen.
Right. I mean, that's basically all their argument is that um kind of like when someone else on Reddit, they was arguing how Lois is jealous of Diana. And it was basically saying that Clark is like he's genetically supposed to be in love with Lois. Like he belongs to Lois, so she can't be jealous. And it's like no, first of all, no one belongs to anyone,
Yeah.
you know, and it's pretty much that Lois is the default love interest. The thing is, Diana is not. They're two separate franchises, two separate main characters, Clark and
Mm-hmm.
Diana. So that's pretty much the only um, wedge that goes against them being together because putting two main characters together, especially in a romance, and how Clark is supposed to be, this savior type character. But Diana is the fighter, but she also is the savior protector too, on a different level. She's mostly the fighter, he's mostly the protector. As we discussed a few episodes back, was that actually does blend in together.
Mm-hmm.
It does turn as he is the protector, he is the fighter. That does blend together, but so it's for Superman to carry, you know, the damsel in distress or whatever. They want him to be able to save her when she's kidnapped or something like that. And with Diana, you can't do that. Tomasi, he admitted that writing Diana as an equal, demanding spotlight was difficult. Having her and CBR, when they was arguing back and forth with why, they did what they did to transition to Rebirth. And it's kind of like, well, look at Lois being the glorified housewife, and all she did was bake pies. She stayed at home. She didn't even have a job. Like they wanted her to write books, under a anonymous name, but she didn't really have a role. She was just the wife and mother, and she was barely a mother to John. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
they didn't show that. They didn't really show that relationship. Even with her being pregnant, you don't see that progression at all. Everything is done with Lois and Clark. Everything is basically done off panel or off screen.
Yeah.
It's
Or
just
in
a
someone's head
relationship
canon,
where,
which again, I always tell people, your head canon is not valid canon.
especially when you can't even find any panels or something like facts are facts. You can have your ideas of the characters. This is why we write, fan fictions or something. This is why we do fan edits too. But we
But the thing about yours
know,
specifically, remember, give yourself the credit where credit's due. You don't change the characters in your fanfics. You pretty much just write them as they are. You just place them in these scenarios where we've seen them, but it's obviously in a romantic twist.
yeah, or is a still that status quo that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we find problematic. Like most of the time, I do have them as the best friends who have obvious feelings for each other, and to show in different stories or, different, um, you know, settings or whatever, how that relationship evolves, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is something that I do want to do, and because these characters, they don't need to change their
Nope.
core of Clark being this golden heart. He's not a golden retriever, and I can't those type of analogies that are calling him basically a dog on a leash, especially for Lois. You know, golden retriever. I don't like that.
Because that takes away his
Him
agency, as a matter of fact.
basically, yeah, calling him a himbo, which is basically like this
Oh
buff
my god.
kind of, you know, stupid.
Hmm.
You know, he didn't have a mind of his own. Or um, even with calling him boring, he is very boring when you go surface level, magnet, this status, just having him as the Clark is what I can, the Clark is who I am, Superman is what I can do. When you
Yeah.
try to force force alien character with the complex emotions, this complex life, and you to basically reduce it and change it to a quote unquote normal sea of like this every he is supposed to be like an everyday man, but on a totally grander scale. Grant Morrison said he's supposed to be like Paul Bunyan. And it's
Yeah.
basically like when he walks his dog, walk crypto like on plant on Saturn, you know. When he is going, if he just wants to go for a walk, he can go for a walk in space, something like that. Or
Hmm.
when he visits, he said when his family visit, they visit from the 31st century or something like that. That is what Superman is supposed to be. Superman is supposed to be, you have normal things going on, but you put it on a grander scale. And that is also what his relationship with Diana represents too. They are a normal couple, but they have powers. They are, this alien and this demigoddess. Diana, she has siblings, but they are gods. Clark, he meets the family, end up in a fight, and it's basically
My favorite
a
fight.
yeah, and it's basically a sun god versus, a sun god versus sun god. That is what you want these characters to be, that can still tell that they delve into the normal type thing, but you add on to the fantastical, the whimsical type thing in a fun way.
Hmm.
But you don't do a certain level where Superman is only just happy go lucky, smiling, everyone accepting him type thing. And you also don't want to delve too much into the darkness of
Yeah.
like how they have injustice, or the mindless killing of some of of anything like that. You want to have a balance. You want to
Hmm.
have these characters in a normalcy, but also mix, you know, equally the magical part of it. And that is the thing that Superman struggles with, especially that most of his supporting cast, to me, they're liabilities
Hmm.
because they don't elevate him. His character with Batman, you have his villains and supporting cast, even when Alfred is alive, you know, he was a butler, but now you see even Alfred is fleshed out,
Hmm.
that he used to be like a spy or something, or that he know martial arts, or something like that. He is a tech genius or something like that. Then you have the Robins evolving to their own unique character.
Yeah.
But, and then you have Talia and Catwoman as his love interests. And when you write them correctly and, with respect, They are also unique. And then you have Gotham and the rest of the villains that are unique. And Gotham itself is a character all by itself as a city. But Metropolis is supposed to be the city of tomorrow, but you have it as like normal, just a normal, regular place. Smallville, even with Smallville, yeah, it's normal, but how about have Smallville become like Stranger Things type, something,
That would be dope.
why is so that it makes even more sense that if Martha and Jonathan see baby, in a rocket, it's kind of like, oh, we've dealt with something like this before.
Oh,
That
it's just an
Smallville is
every
something.
Tuesday thing here.
Yeah, Smallville is unique too. It's not just, it's not just this normal place. That it has its own character too. And Metropolis, Williamson is trying to, put Metropolis on the scale of Gotham, but it's still missing. He's just beginning, I know, but it still feels very safe. It doesn't feel like he's doing, you know, enough, and
To
still
be
leaning
to
more.
be fair, he's still in relatively the beginning of his run, so there's still
Yeah,
time for him to do this. And I have to say, I have been enjoying what he's been doing with the Super Family, because at least he's doing something new. My only problem, when you cluster so many Kryptonians in one spot, that spot had better be like the place with zero crime. I can't believe people actually try to commit crimes in Metropolis when you have five Kryptonians calling it home.
exactly. That's the thing that kind of like it ruins the story,
Mm-hmm.
because they aren't unique. The You have the twins
Mm-hmm.
that Philip introduced, but they are supposed to be, these kids that were enslaved, and he did show glimpses of them kind of like having the PTSD type, feeling, but he pretty much glossed over that, and now they're just like these superpowered kids, and you want them to be normal.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I also said that he was going to give them normal names too, instead of keeping their, you know, their
Yeah.
alien names. And
Again,
you,
it's the whole xenophobic to lean in Superman thing and Superman writing.
right. And then you have, even though he is trying to bad uniqueness, okay, I would say that Philip can write Superman without the xenophobic, that
Yeah.
undertone. But because of this quote, he does lean too much on trying to have Clark Kent. And with Clark Kent, it, it, it's unintentional to delve into that xenophobic undertone, because you want him to be just this normal, but no, his is not normal. It's never been normal. So trying to have that, you end up undercutting the the magical part of him being Kryptonian, like with Kara, especially with Kara. They say that she is more of the refugee, she is more of the Kryptonian, the outsider, or whatever, like than Clark is. No, yes and no. It's because she is on a different level. She was older than him, she knows the loss.
Mm-hmm.
Clark, though, he was only 2 years old. Well, originally he was two. Um, then post crisis did where he was, to have him be American. Um, he was basically born in the rocket, in the birthing matrix
Yeah, pretty much.
on
Yeah.
the U.S. soil. And that still, again, the xenophobic undertone is just awful with that. Like, I, would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that just takes away so much more from Jarrell and Laura, especially Laura. And that's what I also liked about New 52 is that it tried to give her much more character. Lobdell, Scott Lobdell, he wasn't the best writer, but he did write a good Jarrell and Laura, especially giving Laura the title as General
Oh,
and
good God. All that
her
before.
being
I have a bunch of the issues from like before, like of the like those establishment issues with Superman because in my LCS they were like really cheap, and I have the tendency where if I see new 52 Superman, I just grab in bulk and just put them in my hands, and I'm like, this is mine now. I'm claiming it. So I was checking it out, and I was like, because here's the thing, I like learning about like Krypton stuff because you learn about Krypton, you learn about the context on like why Superman is who he is. Because I got news for you: no matter what you do with Clark Kent, the Kryptonian part of his heritage is always going to inform who he is as a hero and as a person. Because he basically surrounds himself with Kryptonian crap. He goes to his parents' holograms constantly for advice. Who know he values their opinion. His suit in the new 52, at least, was Kryptonian body armor. I'm like, the dude is surrounding himself with Kryptonian culture.
I mean, even his cape is his baby blanket. You know, it's like that's your Kryptonian. You know, for the cape to be special, for him to always have a cape, that is your protectiveness of your mother wrapping you in that cape or in that blanket.
Yeah, exactly.
And for you to like basically as an undercut that and be so selfish and ungrateful that your parents, birth parents, sacrificed, I mean, they could have kept the story wouldn't have been the story of Superman, but they could have kept you on, the planet and you would have you know, would have,
Well, die.
met a died too. But they wanted to save you. And then you also see with the origin, and I think Greg Pak he wrote that of seeing more that Laura, she was also an explorer and she was a scientist. And like you said, when going into the fortress, you see that Clark is a scientist. You see him as an explorer, as a writer too, because where did he get it from? He got it from his parents. Being a writer, at first, being the reporter in the 30s was for him to get the news, get the news fast or whatever, for him to go out and save the day. But as it evolved, it just became a thing. But the way, in a sense, unintentionally that I see it, the New 52 really showed where he got a lot of his personality and his motivation from was Jarrell and Laura.
And again, Brit, I want to stop you there because you know what? That actually summarizes this entire point. Because here's the thing about Snyder and the new 52. Because again, to reiterate, I could not care less about Superman. I thought he was lame. Then when I learned so much about this, because I was given all this fantastic information about him, I finally understood, okay, this is why this character exists. This is why this character is essential. This is why people love this character so much. Now I get it, because you get like the Kryptonian part. It broke down. No, the compelling thing is not that he's this powered being that has like that could solve every problem. The compelling part is that he still chooses a life of essential servitude, even though he could legitimately decide, okay, I'm going to rule you guys. But no, he continues to be of service despite the fact that he is this god amongst men.
Right. And with him, going back to him being a writer, Jarrell, he wrote journals, so that
Mhm.
goes to why he loved being a writer. Being a scientist, his parents were scientists. To also make it seem like Clark isn't smart, first of all, he's supposed to be super. The Kryptonians are advanced humanoids or whatever like that.
Mhm.
They are advanced though. It's very, very smart. So for Clark to um his he isn't shown as very smart, kind of like an average or something. But he is supposed to be like the top, even during school, you know, it's like he was supposed to downplay himself. But he downplayed himself too much to where now he grows up to act that same way, and it's kind of like a psychological, you know, bending over backwards, especially with Batman. He's supposed to be like the world greatest detective and the smartest on the Justice League, and you forget that everyone within the Justice League is highly intelligent, and but you know especially Clark and Martian Manhunter. Those two are supposed to be like in within the top 1% of the smartest, and Diana too, um, Justice League members,
Yeah.
because of their advancement as alien and a demigoddess. Then you have, like I said, Laura being a general, and she reminded me so much of Diana and Hippolyta,
Mhm.
and how that inspired me to with one fic too, is that she was a general, and she basically
I
like
remember that one.
she would have been very much an Amazon, like an honorary Amazon, and she would have loved Diana because she is a warrior too.
Mhm.
Even in Power Couple, Zod, he compares them. He's like, your, Diana is basically just like your mother.
Mhm.
And honestly, you never got that type of comparison with Lois. Like,
Nope.
you never have. And another thing with New 52 was, um a lot of people are going back to appreciating it, and especially New 52 Superman, and saying that he is the Superman that we need. But
Yeah.
it's one um commenter or whatever on Twitter that basically says his downfall is his relationship with Diana. And
How?
it's kind of like it exactly. It's like you want the Superman that you want, where he embraces being an outsider, where he is the champion of the people, where he is, selfless and self-sacrificing. It's because he's with Diana. But then you go with the one that's with Lois, and look at everything that he does. He's very selfish. He's not very smart, or he 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 doesn't own his being an outsider or whatever. He wants to be just this, human, normal type thing. So don't you see that, yeah, the Superman that you want, or that you claim to have hated, the reason why he is who he is because of the path that he had, and especially with Diana, because she is the one that emphasizes on being the outsider.
Mhm.
And that's also part of why they didn't get together in the 80s, was because um with the post crisis, with John wanting to basically have Clark more human, quote unquote. Of course he couldn't be with Diana, because that would make you, want to explore the outsider and, the alienness of him. But to make it bad, he couldn't be with Diana, and they had to be of different worlds. And like I said, even Perez, he kind of called it out. It was kind of like, even though Diana sees Clark as a god, what people kind of like, they oversimplify it. she doesn't see him as a god, as in like, gonna worship him. She sees him as this powerful man, but at the same time, he's so humbled and so like, you know, just kind of perfect.
Hmm.
And she is inspired by that. But what disappoints her is when he becomes the basically like the status quo keeper. When he, protects this obviously problematic, status quo of society instead of moving forward, helping, move forward. And that was one of the things that also post crisis fans don't gloss over, is that after John left the book, their whole thing, and even with Dan Jargens, he tried to maintain that, but after even that, it was like trying to bring back pre-crisis elements and balance out, the Clark being more, accepting of his identity, but you still had writers who again delved into the xenophobic undertones, and we're stuck with that now. So how now does Superman um change? I have no idea. With Gunn going back to the movies, he says that he's going to explore that, and his inspiration is Grant Morrison. But with his idea of him being a galoot, and I feel like he's going to, at the end, make him into still the post-crisis Clark is who I am, Superman is what I can do. I don't it's just, because that's so much of the default easy
Although
way out.
I'm gonna disagree with you on that, but and this is all assuming that Gunn sticks to his statements that he has said. He said the whole reason why it's called Superman Legacy is that he's gonna have Clark reconcile where he stands with his Kryptonian and human heritage. So that right there kind of communicates to me, at least to me, that he's gonna try and balance the two at least.
Well, yeah, that is what I heard from him too. But you know, still coupled with the galoot part, I think
Mm,
that's what's kind of, you know,
that's the stupid part.
and saying that his inspiration is kind of like the Donner films too. It yeah, it doesn't mesh well with me yet. Of course, we don't know much of the plot, and he might, surprise us and show that true balance of that and stuff, and you
And by the
know,
way, so what we said earlier on a stream, me and the other co-host, is that here's how we can handle the Trunks situation. So you can do like the first suit he gets is the classic suit with the trunks. Then in a battle, it gets torn up. And this is when he goes to the fortress and discovers his Kryptonian heritage. And then the Kryptonian suit, they can even do the new 52 suit, doesn't have the trunks. So that way you could have the both show up.
yeah, you can have honestly, I think that they should do like the early Fletcher S.
Yeah, I like that
Um
one. Kind of like what they did in Superman and Lois.
yeah, do that and have it or even the jeans and tee. Like do something different.
Please, I really want that jeans because that was a fantastic suit. You see, here's
Yeah,
the thing: a lot of people are like, "Yeah, I didn't like the Kryptonian armor, but I would have been fine if they kept just the jeans and tee as his Superman suit."
I would too. I mean, because it shows him being the everyday man, but also that is a way to balance it out
Hmm.
because he is, you know, when I say a farm boy at heart, you know, it still it's a lot of oversimplifications.
Hmm.
The farm boy is, the that he has the respect, that he has a love, the heart of gold, that he is humbled and everything like that. When you put it in that perspective, I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put that all together with the fact that, yeah, he became a hero not because of one person at all. He
Nope.
became, and that's another thing that I loved about New 52 was when he explained why he became Superman was because Smallville inspired him. And he said that he wants to protect places like Smallville. And that was such like,
That's why I'm like,
yes.
when people say that new 52 Superman wasn't Superman, or like he was so dark and depressing, I'm like, you clearly were not reading these books.
No, they don't read. Just like with even Diana, like the only thing, the panel that they post, or
Mm-hmm.
panels that they post, are issue 7, when they show the Amazons,
Being the
raping.
rapist and all that stuff,
Yeah,
and then they also show the one that's her saying, "There's a reason why I don't have a list of villains as long as yours and Bruce's, because she's basically saying I kill them." Well,
yeah,
in her defense, her villains at that point in the continuity were all like Greek myth gods and monsters.
yeah. So within the context, it's like, first of all, you have to see who's writing it, which is Jeff. I mean, Jeff Johns. He's a very good writer, but he has had difficulty with Diana, and with the context of that part, he wanted to um, give a little conflict for Clark and Diana. He even said it. He said that a relationship has its ups and downs, and its ups again. So that's what he wanted to do, and it didn't stick the landing or whatever. And now you have people taking that out of context.
But speaking
Then
of Jeff Johns, this is my moment to brag, but he follows Comics League.
that is awesome.
I
Now
have
you have to have an
never.
interview.
Yeah, I'm trying, but I have never spent so much time verifying someone's identity before, because my first reaction was, okay, this has to be like a fake account or something like that. Then when I see Tomasi and Gleason, Manipul following him, like the verified accounts, I'm like, it hits me, and I'm like, oh my god, it's actually Jeff Johns.
Yeah, I mean, now, especially when people can now buy verified, the
Yeah.
verified stickers, and you do have these fan accounts that act like they are the real person. Yeah, you do have to do a deep dive and research to make sure that this is the right person.
Yeah, but I was like, oh man. By the way, speaking of James Gunn, here's something I wanted to tell you. So he posted a picture for Wonder Woman Day, because today is Wonder Woman Day. I wanted to share the particular image he showed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Of all the images he could have picked,
I I mean, I,
are we getting a
I'm
God
very,
of War movie with Wonder Woman?
I'm very speechless because with that image, that was the thing that, first of all, I know the Wonder Woman Twitter fans are having a
Oh,
fit.
they're having a collective freak out right now, which I'm going to tell you this right now. James has been pretty congratulatory to the new 52 in statements and stuff. So what I'm thinking is, could he be leaning more toward adapting a lot of that stuff? And if so, hey, we could be getting a Superman Wonder Woman movie.
Honestly, as long as you like, even if it's not a movie,
Mm-hmm.
even though, I mean, that would be something so different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it, and it makes so much sense. Even if it's not a movie, at least have them interact and be the friends, or
Well,
that they're supposed to be.
yeah, the problem with the Snyderverse is that it was cut off before he got the opportunity to do that. Because remember, the Justice League had just formed when Snyder was shown the door.
Right. So instead of, well, again, it's all WB. They're reactionary of um you know, like you said with Sam, when expectations aren't met, they I mean, either way, because with Superman and Wonder Woman, expectations actually succeeded and they still screwed it over.
Yeah.
So when expectations aren't met, they really screw you over. Um, but then they go bizarro, and some things, unless it's what they preferred and is biased, then they will keep it going. But yeah, with the Snyderverse, if it had its problems, you just need to polish it. You just need
Hmm.
to just slow down. At New 52 too.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
perfect.
it
There's still issues with it, but my position is you didn't have to throw it out. That's where I draw the line, because it's like there was enough there that you could salvage it.
Yeah, you can. It's a lot of great stories within Snyderverse and New 52,
Hmm.
and like you said, all you have to do was slow down and let it like naturally flow, and get the execution right. Get you know get people that are uh communicative
Hmm.
and that's on the same page. With the Snyderverse and New 52, a lot of people weren't on the same page because they had their own ideas. It was too many cooks in the kitchen. And it's like, and it's in power tripping. And when
Hmm.
you have that, yeah, it's going to be a disaster. But at the end, New 52 still succeeded in bringing new fans. It still succeeded financially. You just needed to keep it going. And, you know, when people say like you could have had the New 52 and then basically change the characters to what you traditional, it's kind of like no, because again, with Rebirth, even though that was done, it wasn't done gradually, but it was done on the fly, but you still turn these characters basically back to the post-crisis versions, and look at how DC is just stagnant now.
Hmm.
It's average. Even
Yeah.
with, so no, that doesn't go. All you have to do was with New 52, just have people who actually could be creative and care for the line, and like I said, slow down. With Snyderverse, all you had to do was just, if it's some plots that wouldn't work, that was too controversial, just drop it and or rewrite it and keep going, you know. But now you have a universe where, because of all of that happened, the general audience saw more drama, behind the scenes drama, than the actual movies. So now you have your brand messed up with the general audience, and they don't trust that it can be, something of interest, that it can be something enjoyable. And
That's why
even with,
I highly doubt that the entire DCU will happen.
yeah, I half half of the um those projects, first of all, it will take a long time, especially with what's going on with the strikes.
Hmm.
If they don't have a deal on Tuesday, um then you have to have the stuff written, and some of the stuff that you might have an idea for, it with, especially with live action, it's not something that you can draw. You
Hmm.
can draw that, and you actually have to see it executed on, with real people. And what you write sometimes does not translate well with live action. So yeah, some of these, and the thing is with James Gunn, his whole point is Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman as the Trinity will be used to um basically be springboards for Z-listers,
Hmm.
for,
That's why.
and it's kind of like, maybe that'll work, maybe that won't work. um it still feels like they're trying to chase Marvel's formula, and it's kind of like Marvel did set the tone, but Marvel also set the tone of now of like a superhero fatigue, and like Marvel movies and Marvel franchise, it's messy right now, but it's still universally and for the general audience to know it. Even when I see posts on Instagram, Superman and Wonder Woman posts, and Marvel is tagged or Marvel is hashtagged, and it's kind of like, wow, nobody, likes, they don't see DC, and that's very embarrassing and very sad. So yeah, now DC has to play catch up, but they're gonna play catch up in the wrong ways. And you feel like that the only thing that they do have are these spurt projects, of C-listers that may or may not work.
And here's the thing. I've covered this stuff long enough to know that even if it's a new regime, if Warner Brothers senses blood, they will pull the plug on it instantly.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't know. I hope that the only thing that I really want to succeed or to see is finally Superman and Wonder Woman having, the interaction that they supposed to have.
But the problem is, I'm like, wait a second. So Superman exists in a world already with superheroes because you have Green Lantern, Plastic Man, and that. I'm fine with that. Then why are you coming out with a Wonder Woman project that's a prequel to everything? Why don't you just establish who your Wonder Woman is in this universe first before you do all that stuff?
I think because what they're trying to do is, in pretty much, I don't know if Historia is was a book that was actually kind of being promoted as with guns, new DCU type thing. So I think that is what the prequel is going to be, is basically a story about Hippolyta, and it's probably going to be just 8 episodes, and just the origin of the new Diana, basically what it is.
Could be.
Yeah.
And by the way, this would be a fantastic future episode for us to do, and how in discussing the DCU. So more on that next week. So anyway, so we're gonna start wrapping up now. But Brit and I have a little project we want to tease. So
yes.
So as you know, Brit is the fanfic writer extraordinaire. I have sung her praises even before this show. But
yes, thank you.
Well, anytime. And so we're actually collaborating on a story.
Yes, and it's so exciting. But you definitely have me in my feelings.
I can do that. So do you want to do you want to tell them the premise of the story, or do you want to hint it, or you want to just wait?
So, well, we can just say, well, I think I already basically hinted it about being in my feelings. And it's and it's basically, let's give Diana, a very hard time. And, really,
because the question I asked Brit is a question that I get a lot through that I had previously received, is if Clark is secretly in love with Diana, why is he with Lois and not with her? And she brought up that he doesn't see himself as good enough for her, which I'm like, okay, how would you, if you ran DC, fix that? And then she gave me a scenario, first off, the first scenario was he gives her comfort when no one else can. And I'm like, okay, how would that happen? And then it just snowballed into a story where we take elements from various areas of comics. It's not the new 52 primarily. It's we're taking a lot of inspiration actually from Sacrifice.
Yes, Sacrifice and our worlds at war.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, is primarily now is giving Diana perspective and basically putting her through hell. And we're going to see how she deals with that and how Clark, really, it's especially when he tried to suppress his feelings, but seeing her so down, it's kind of like, okay, no, I can't, let her go like this. That he has to be with her now. It in this very depressing time. And like I said, just thinking about it, yeah, I'm really emotional. I am an
The funny
emotional
part is
person
that
anyway.
the funny part is that Brit's sending me all these reaction emojis, and I'm like, am I gonna give her a nervous breakdown with all this stuff? Because I come up with like,
Honestly,
we could do this, and Brit's like sending me crying emojis.
honestly, with the story, yeah, it definitely feels very, it's a happy ending, we do have that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely going
She is gonna go through hell.
to get through to get to that uh happy ending is going to be a very challenging, emotional roller coaster for me.
Yeah, there you go. But the title of it is, I think we went with Shelter from the Storm.
yes, yes, we did. We went because that quote really stood out, and
Thank
like
you,
we said,
Charles Sewell.
yes, and it also with seeing other couples to use that, and yeah, I have seen a lot of couples on Instagram that, like I said, I am an emotional person, so with seeing that kind of stuff, it just makes me want to cry.
Mm-hmm.
So, and especially what that quote supposed to represent, is any type of battle, you know, you don't have to face it alone, that you have me right there with you. So with this storm, with this, this battle that you have to go through, you aren't going to be alone with it. And yeah, it just so fitting to this story. And also you have me, listening to sad songs
Mm-hmm.
too. So yeah, it's going to be very emotional
Yeah,
for me for until we
yeah. So we'll reveal more about it as the episodes go by. It'll be like a little teaser thing until,
teasers.
yes, until the chapter goes out, until the individual chapters start going out. But anyway, so Britt, besides that, do you have any other stories you want to tease us with?
Well, I do have now happy stories.
Oh
and
yes,
it's
we're gonna go from really depressing to super happy.
and it's basically actually a little bit of Austria, and someone actually wanted a request to a little flash forward of her older years. And
Mm-hmm.
that was something that I was already thinking about. So that's a one shot. And then starting actually part three of The Blessing, where it introduces her pet cat, which is a cursed goddess.
Hmm.
She is I already kind of introduced her in a one shot, but this is giving the origin of how she turned into a cat and who she is and why she is, connected to Austria. And then Austria and her adventures with the gods, especially Hera being her reluctant, like, step grandmother, you know, and just that whole thing of you have this baby, this toddler running, amok in on Mount Olympus.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So, that's awesome. I can't wait for the early previews because that's what I have become now. I have become the access media, except for Nick and for you. So I'll take it. But so stay heroic, everyone, and we will see you in the next episode. Thanks. Bye bye.